Hello, my name is Alora Zulliger, and my presentation today is called Mutant Food, Examining GMO Regulation Initiatives in Oregon and Alaska. Okay, what are GMOs? Genetically modified organisms, more commonly referred to as GMOs, are organisms whose genome or genomes have been altered in order to favor the expression of desired physiological traits or the output of desired biological products. That's the definition that Merriam-Webster Dictionary gives. How are GMOs created? Basically, GMOs are created through recombinant DNA technology. So what happens is the scientists splice together DNA molecules of multiple organisms. So there's a little picture up in the left-hand corner here that shows this, where they split them apart and then they splice them together, and then they insert this modified DNA back into whichever plant they're modifying through the use of bacteria, including E. coli. The reason why they do this is because they want to try to get that new DNA to assimilate with the old DNA so that it will actually be accepted, that the plant will accept it and not reject it, and because bacteria are harder for plants to fight off than just putting in foreign DNA, they inject it in the bacteria and then it will infiltrate the new plant. So then they grow these new modified plants as crops. This is a problem because each gene contains many traits, not just the one they're trying to control. So if you take the DNA of this one specific gene and they're trying to control, say, the ability to withstand severe temperature, the problem is that's not the only trait that you are modifying by splicing together those multiple DNA. So there are a lot of weird things that start to happen because of this. Alright, so let's look at the ideals behind GMOs. So there are some positive things that, if you look at GMOs, if you look at the concept of genetically modified organisms, it can sound like a good thing. So increased crop yields to feed a rapidly growing world population, and admittedly to make more money, and resistance to severe temperature, insect infestation, and herbicides. They're trying to modify these plants to make them better, to make them hardier and stronger and more resistant to these negative effects. However, there are many problems that accompany genetically modified organisms, including herbicide-resistant strains of plants, cross-contamination, reduced biodiversity, and many health issues. So let's take a look at some of the health issues associated with GMOs. First of all, cancer. Genetically modified organisms in the form of growth hormones such as IGF-1, which is prevalent in cow's milk, has been medically linked to higher rates of cancer, and lots of research has proven this one. Other health issues are infertility and reproductive disorders, high levels of pesticides in bloodstreams of mothers and their unborn fetuses. This is because the pesticides transfer from the transport bacteria that we were talking about earlier in the genetically modified food to bacteria in the bloodstream, so it stays in the bloodstream longer. Organ damage, gastrointestinal and immune system disorders, accelerated rates of aging. Something else is that autism rates have been on the rise since the introduction of GMOs in 1995, and though they haven't found causation with this and the correlation is not very well linked, it's definitely suspicious. Another thing to note is that longitudinal studies on the effects of GMOs are currently in short supply because they were just introduced in 1995. Thus, all information regarding the health effects of GMOs are shorter term. History of GMO opposition. People really started opposing genetically modified food when over 1 million people signed a petition that would require the labeling of genetically modified elements in any food products. This was the petition that the FDA received with the most signatures on it in the history of the FDA. Since then, states have begun drawing up initiatives. As of yet, only one state has been successful in mandating GMO labeling across the boards, which is Vermont. A large number of other initiatives fell through, but some states are still actively pursuing labeling measures, such as Oregon. The Oregon Mandatory Labeling of GMOs Initiative is going up for public vote on November 4th, 2014, so it's coming up here really shortly. It requires, according to them, retailers of genetically engineered raw food to include genetically engineered on packages, display bins, or shelves. Suppliers must label shipping containers, requires manufacturers of packaged food products or produced entirely or partially by genetic engineering to include produced with genetic engineering or partially produced with genetic engineering on packages. When GMO food is labeled, people can make up their own minds regarding the risks versus the benefits of GMOs. Choice is always a good thing. Alright, so why is this important to Alaska? Alaskans are affected just as much, if not more, than other states in regards to GMOs. When an Alaskan goes to the grocery store to pick up produce, what do they encounter? Oftentimes the food on the shelves and in the produce bins is up to several weeks old. Weeks, you may be asking? Yes, weeks. Because of the complicated transportation of food, getting here thousands of miles to Alaska, this food, especially in the winter months, is picked long before it reaches ripeness. Additional sides, such as pesticides and herbicides, etc., are added to this produce to make it last longer, and with packaged food, many preservatives are added. So this lowers the nutritional density and availability or bioavailability of these foods already. Essentially, because our foods are already lower in nutrient levels, unnaturally modifying them only exacerbates the ill effects of these foods on our bodies. Fish in Alaska. Okay, this is very interesting. So Senate Bill 25 was actually approved in 2005. Senate Bill 25 mandated the labeling of genetically modified fish in the state of Alaska, so this was such a positive step towards building a healthier populace in the state of Alaska. Now we just need to extend the same principle. Alaska needs to take a stand against genetically engineered food by regulating packaging and labeling on all foods containing GMOs. Let's strive to create a healthier state. Okay, thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed my presentation, and let me know if you have any questions.